Good afternoon. I'm still reporting on the coup. This is what my wife has to look at every day. Tomorrow it's getting cut. It's never been more clear. Biden's intelligence community is using classic wag the dog tactics to fill up the news cycle of U.S. television with so-called war news consisting of empty, non-strategic strikes against relatively low-value targets to hide the fact that they are not going after the source of the problem, that is, Iran. So, what are Wag the Dog operations anyway? Operations which are designed to create a diversion away from a political damaging issue or scandal that is about to surface in the news, especially television news, which is designed to divert public attention away from the bigger issue by only reporting on the smaller issue. So the tail is wagging the dog. But the tail is a much smaller part of the dog, but it diverts public attention from the more politically damaging bigger issue. So, what is the Brandon Obama regime so afraid of? Their coup d'etat is falling apart, but the deceptions are so vast that it will take months to years for the incoming flow of news stories to completely expose them. And that is why the wag the dog tactics of military strikes started last Friday. This is why our fearless National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, announced yesterday that the strikes will continue whenever other fabricated pro-Brandon Obama Iran regime stories cannot consume sufficient minutes of the newscasts to prevent the ongoing implosions of the Trump indictments scams from being revealed to the public.
It began with the strikes on Friday night, but that is not the end of it. We intend to take additional strikes and additional action to continue to send a clear message that the United States will respond when our forces are attacked or our people are killed.
So that was National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan saying that this is just the beginning after a weekend of retaliatory strikes from the U.S. and parts of Iraq, Syria, and Yemen.
And why is it that the Brandon regime hit Iraq, Syria, and Yemen? I thought those were all proxies for the mullah's regime in Iran.
And they hit more than 85 targets spread out across the Middle East in response to the Iranian-backed drone strike that killed 3 U.S. troops a week ago.
That's what I thought I'd remembered. So why?
Bombers high, right in the air.
Every time they try to pull this wag the dog stunt throughout election 2024, you'll hear me play this 4-second clip from the 1953 Jimmy Stewart flick, Strategic Air Command. Not because I have anything against the Air Force. Growing up, we lived on SAC bomber bases. We lived at the end of the runway on Carswell Air Force Base when the biggest bombers of all time, the B-36s, would shake our house as they came over as they were taking off. I was born on Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I am proud to have been close to this stuff, and I'm not knocking anything the Air Force did in these raids. They are just following orders and performing with remarkable precision. I'm proud of them. However, Air Force General Blaine Holt, whom I completely admire, explains the difference.
The world can see that no matter how the politics run in this nation, no matter what we see with these DEI woke programs, the United States military, when it needs to, can execute with precision, and it can do it quite effectively. We can all argue about what those targets are and whether they're effective, and we will argue about the strategy. We have to argue about the strategy. But what we can take solace in is that as of this day, our United States military can do incredible things. A 44-hour round trip on these bombers with these bomber pilots, pickling it right into where they were told to go, and then getting back home safely with all those tankers required. Hats off to them. Now, the strategy pieces and parts, the academics in the White House need to answer for that, because we haven't been told yet from the Resolute desk where this is going and what we intend to achieve. What we do know is we gave them a week's advance notice, allowed all of the leadership in those targets to flee, and then they can come back. And so it's very unclear what we're trying to achieve.
Of course, it is obvious that General Holt knows what the Brandon Oblama regime is trying to achieve. These are not simple strategic mistakes or some sort of pansy-ass weakness showing. This is absolutely deliberate. The Brandon Oblama regime, and I emphasize that they will never be granted the legitimate title of an administration, they are a regime, no more legitimate than the regime of the mullahs in Iran, who could no more stand a legitimate vote of the Iranian public in a free, fair, and transparent election than could the Brandon regime.
And nobody yet has validated any of our forces that are sitting there in harm's way or why they're not allowed to protect themselves.
Mike, as someone else who served this country as a Navy SEAL, why do you think there has been so much hesitation from the Biden administration to hit targets in Iran itself?
Newsmax anchor Rob Finnerty, who is excellent in my opinion, knows the answer to this question, as does most of our audience, but he, just like we, need to pose this question over and over to get it out there. The regime won't hit the mullahs regime because they are helping finance the mullahs regime to the tune of billions of dollars. But then Russia comes into the picture as well.
A Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson said that the American airstrikes, this is a quote, once again demonstrated to the world the aggressive nature of U.S. policy in the Middle East and Washington's complete disregard for international law, which is laughable, although it's quite predictable that CNN would even publish that.
So there you have it. This is a deliberate wag the dog strategy from our current regime, and Newsmax needs to stop pretending that Brandon is just making unforced errors. These are not mistakes. This is a traitorous strategy executed by communists within our security system to deflect bad news from hitting the U.S. news cycle and at the same time make Brandon look like a strong war president to help him get across the electoral finish line one more time. Don't fall for it. We will call out the smoke and mirrors or wag the dog distraction operation every time it is deployed until the trumpet can return to his rightful place. I'm still reporting from just outside the one-time center of world freedom. Good day.